Okay, yeah, I'm just going to go with it. I don't know how much power this battery has in the effects lighting that you see. I'm fixing to get more of the same of what you're seeing on me now and inside this head, but that's kind of like thinking about certain issues and a little bit of humor about Maury Povich. What does Maury Povich have in common with Jane Russell and 24-hour cross your heart bra and absentee voting? It's kind of like, I guess I'll know when I know, as my password, yeah. I guess I'll know when I know for the Daily Double is my password, yeah. So, but anyway, yeah, so I was kind of like thinking a little bit about that because of, Maury Povich seems to be the thing about Ulysses S. Grant, and the name, it almost sounds like, contradictive, not really, appreciation, it's kind of like appreciation, depreciation, Ulysses S. Grant, or how family law is actually used as a student loan combined with a Pell Grant, almost like foster granting, in the way of like the name of Maury Povich, like poverty rich, and what absentee voting is. I mean, just with its name alone, it seemed to be, where it goes with the Ulysses S. Grant issue, and it seemed to be the thing about whether or not if certain thing about the, I really don't want to call it timeshare because, I mean, it's only if a foreknowledge is really given the presence of participation as some idea of an agreement. I mean, the thing with this is that family law doesn't really dictate whether or not if litigation de facto res habeas corpus is used as an easement for intellectual property in the way of family law, using something like a student loan combined with a Pell Grant, almost like the Ulysses S. Grant issue that seemed to be whether or not if foster granting representation would even include the thought of like what is normally involved sometimes, not always, with like a supplemental security income or non-taxable income. And family law comes in such a way it's almost not recognized as having the presence or the thought of even networking, or giving the impression of even community service or community supervision. The thing with this is that in the idea of like what managing is of intellectual property, it's kind of like sometimes it seems to be whether or not if knowing or not knowing is the only idea of what generates the perception of having a right to assemble, or the thing with this is that not having a breach of copyright, or the practice makes perfect. Don't be fooled by imitations, but it seemed to be that really whether or not if certain factors of this whole entire situation, it seemed to be like really, and I'm going to get right to the thought of not really Will's trust and probate. I don't believe a thing about probate. It's not that I have to know anything about it, but I don't believe a thing about it, okay? The only thing that would only represent maybe some idea of maybe why one James Bond movie is not about the Bond. The thought of maybe in tool, device, and mechanism being used as a fixture in real estate, or some idea that a method of banking is only the idea of a transfer of what holding seems to have only meant based upon, an easement. If a tool, device, and mechanism only represents the idea of a principle of like, having fair use but not claiming the rights of ownership, I mean, as a thought, okay? And it almost seemed to be almost about what seemed to be almost involved with like Latin terminology in the letter N in one cycle per second, with half above, half below what would normally be like a center line of oscillation. And it seemed to be, almost, the thing about the word coffee, okay, and the caffeine I mean, it's almost seemed to be like that the similarities, what has been presented, what's been going on. I mean, since, I mean, like 2 years after being on YouTube, and it seemed to be ultimately that you know, several calls for like a 16-month period to 911 had resulted in repeated, you know, admitting diagnosis as congestive heart failure. But the thing with this is it ultimately got to a recommendation that really I didn't really agree with. Not one thing about it, because I didn't believe anything about going through ER. I mean, even more so after the third time, but the first time I knew immediately that the whole entire situation was like more academic and degreed in a way of like just not being an idiot is really what it is. The thing with it is that it doesn't have to be academic or, you know, like a no-brainer at the same time, okay? But the thing with it is that ultimately it seemed to be that similarities had become the entire issue of, like, seems to be referring to, you know, I was going through the circuit and there were certain people talking about, you know, hey, that's their bag, their bag thing. And, you know, and that was like during, gee whiz, that was like 1996, 97, somewhere in there. But anyway, yeah, so like that seemed to be like a thing that's hearing quite a bit about as like a reference. And now seem to be, you know, what the deal is about the similarities of mesothelioma as compared to like smoke inhalation exposed to, you know, a chemical burn of the lungs based upon inhalation. And apparatus that I haven't seen not one time on television ever discussed about, or like some type of a airbag lining the bronchial and expanding to keep the inner side of the bronchi from collapsing due to a chemical burn of inhalation. And what it really is that it seems to be that had actually been something involved, and I was never even discussed or told, but it was presented as what may have been like years before. Yet even electrophysiology, getting shocked in midair in my own home, like the atmosphere in my own home had become, you know, like a Rush compact disc. The air is charged and all that stuff. I mean, just that. Okay, so like I bought a compact disc, okay. I mean, I didn't think that maybe it would include maybe some idea of like a registration or like entering the Stargate program, okay. And the thing with this is that ultimately that it seemed to be that the similarities of what is called ablation, that is, okay, here's the thing about America Online and AOL. It seemed to be the thing about really about the alphanumeric 71 and Paraland, the act of God, and AOL, you know, and the thing about Apple and Oracle, or what seemed to be now the real issues like the one Justice Park of, you know, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, being, you know, the one being 34 in Aryan, and the alphanumeric is 213 between, like, it seemed to be the thing about the operator, okay, and Chevrolet, and the alphanumeric of the operator being 108 in Chevrolet, and ultimately telepathic brainwaves, and Chevrolet Silverado Z71 and all that stuff. But it seemed to be that ultimately it's getting to the thing about, you know, the operator being, you know, 108 and 0. And, you know, even the thing about, you know, Chevrolet Silverado being, you know, 213, or like my name, WadeASVPriddy, or the Aryan Sky and Tibetan thing, and it seemed to be the difference about being amphibious in the way of J. Edgar Hoover, beyond a local area network of internet protocol of maritime law. And it seemed to be the thing about one Justice Park being the thing about international financial management that way, and getting beyond, you know, some idea of a vice president network. But going through it, okay, it's kind of like there had been like certain factors that had taken place, and, you know, like 4 inches of my humerus bone on both sides of my arms, you know, between my elbow and my shoulder had been removed. I mean, there was like no indication or any foreknowledge or any hint or clue. I mean, you know, that I wasn't expecting like anything like that. It's really, the thing is I wasn't looking for like anything about like anything that I'm talking about happening. It's just that all those things were happening, and during a 6 to 9 month period, okay, some really intense being like aerated and gas while I was asleep, okay. And the thing with it is that years later, after the fact, you know, going on, you know, and it seemed really to be the Earth, Wind, and Fire thing about body all Dancing in September, party on, never was a cloudy day. The Earth, Wind, and Fire thing about it seemed to be the thing about, geometric, geospatial information technology. And the thing with this is that, I know it's the acronym of, 36 and chase in oil. The thing with this is about subconscious minus chase or 36, or oil, or GIT, the Geospatial Information Technology. I'm not real familiar with like everything that's involved. My first question was, considering my memory of like, knowing that it happened for a 6 to 9 month period, probably more so now, if like an entire year. And the thing about, being to account what seemed to be between like to a 6 to 9 month period, but there's like a 3 month period, I'm almost for certain was like virtually, beyond impossible to really remember really anything about it. And I'm thinking it's having something to do with neutrality in Geneva, Switzerland, because some of the time in between there had been the difference between being on a Bluebird bus or different locations. It's kind of like, I didn't even know where I was at. And the thing it is that ultimately it got to, going through the circuit at certain times and not realizing everything that's like happening, or, like what just happened, it's kind of like but I knew it was like seriously intense, and that it happened, more than way too many times. But like during a 6 to 9 month period, I'm not sure how many times there was like air raids while I was asleep in certain buildings and locations that ultimately, and I didn't even consider the Stargate program or some idea going beyond what would be considered a circuit, other than the Stargate program that would possibly, be the for it is written. And how for it is written, I'm almost assuming that virtually everything about it is. Based on, what I'm seeing quite a bit about what participation seems to be involving is, a Stargate program involving a circuit and when and where, and, some idea like actually like making it happen. Not that I'm making anything happen other than experiencing something that well, anyway, so it seemed to be like the issue, like, after, 25, 30 years and realizing that memory had become a factor, okay? It became like an extremely huge thing. And when I started remembering, I was seeing more and more music videos and locations of like certain locations, like on YouTube. And I'm a drummer, okay? And the thing with this is that, that would be not really like anything new, knowing that, the entertainers are normally involved, in some shape, form, or fashion, with the uniform at some place, in a career, involving, quite a bit. It's always, it's really like not anything like new to know that, okay? The thing with this is that, what seemed to be the thing is that, after a 25 to 30-year period, that's when it's like reactivated. It seemed to be the thing about Vantage Love 30 and Secret De Facto 30. And when I was like really seriously realizing the thing about, like Austin Powers, Blue Bonnet, Paralegal, and, Interstate 35 in Austin actually being some idea of capacity of like human capital. And it seems the difference of what, the kernel is or is not in television programming. But anyway, it seemed to be like that ultimately, after that, long after like 1995, give or take, 2 or 3 years, the thing about that one song, by Earth, Wind, and Fire seemed to be the thing about September 11th, 9/11, like 1995, in a 6-year period. Seemingly the alphanumeric stuff, 6 seems to be the big deal about, a vice president network as compared to import and exporting of the idea of like, tariff and U.S. patents, more so than the idea of Immigration and Customs Enforcement using, some idea as some principle of a degree of like power, within description involving methods of banking, or the idea of, sand software between like storage area network or securities and annuities network. But the thing with it is that it seemed that all that had really been, taking place. Well, anyway, so like 25, 30 years later, after being on YouTube, beginning like really in 2020, 2022, all these things are like going on in home, and ultimately it resulted in, like for like a 16-month period of calling 911 and admitting diagnosis of congestive heart failure, which was really not anything I was really even going to agree to. Other than, actually addressing, the causation, which was not happening. It seemed to be only treating the symptoms. The symptoms was actually prescribing, the symptom actually being the causation, but not really the causation, other than, the fact of, medicating the thought of, treating the symptoms as, some idea of like a manufactured symptoms as a, that's the only causation other than the causation itself, yeah. So like that had gone on and on and on, and some idea of an oblation was like recommended about and it was described, and the way it was described, it's like it was split off in different directions and approaches towards describing the procedure, and it was first defined as like having 2 layers, 3 layers, and cutting like the tissue to allow what is some idea of like a water fluid trapped in between the layers that need to be released. Yet it was like defined as like protecting, the heart from an inadverse impact. The thing with this is that ultimately the way it was like defined, if it was like all combined all at once at the same time, it would sound like, like a heart transplant. And ultimately, the bags that was being referred to about cutting the lines in the tissue was ultimately like the lung itself, or, some idea of like a bag carrying a heart. The thing with this is that really ultimately, the difference between ablation and oblation, I mean, I'm studying, okay, like, I really like study linguistic alphanumerics. I mean, really, that much that sometimes all I have to do is just really think about what I've already, like, been thinking about and studying, and a whole bunch of, like academic works, looking in different areas, books, and going places, and, all kinds of stuff about, finding out what I need to know. But other than like where I've been going through the circuit, seemed to be predominantly, the extent of like, wow, everything I've ever known is not the way it is, kind of like approach to, going through the circuit. Well, anyway, my point is that, it seemed to me that one deal about the procedure that was being described was not even referring to in any kind of way like smoke inhalation, or like a chemical burn based upon an apparatus like a bag lining the bronchi. It seemed to be, how long it's been in me, in my lungs. I'm not sure, but I've noticed that, and it seemed to be also, in addition to combating like amyloidosis, being exposed to certain factors and conditions, that was actually causing the bone marrow to react and the immunoglobulin to produce an overabundant amount of white blood cells. And that was like part of the real major side of congestive. And cardiologists, I mean, I already knew that what I was hearing, I wasn't hearing what I should have already heard from cardiologists involving, admitting diagnosis of congestive heart failure, other than, maybe some idea like of a, only what access means as, if it seemed to be, like, presenting the idea of better homes and housekeeping as some idea of like an open house. Well, I haven't really, given any kind of idea of what access would only mean based upon agreeing to like really anything about it, based upon, everything that's going on. The thing with this is that ultimately, I had to do my own homework really about the similarities, because I was realizing a whole bunch of was going on about similarities, but not really discussed that way. And the thing about mesothelioma, okay, is that it's like fluid that's trapped in between the tissue, like the lining of the bronchi, and, fluid building up, and like there's like another lining in between, what would be like the inner side of like where airflow is going through like bronchi, and then there's like a like the way the layers is just like it allows, like, oxygen transfer through the lungs into the bloodstream. With mesothelioma, it kind of like gets in between what would be normal thought of like, oxygen transferring through, the tissue of the skin into the bloodstream. You get fluid build up, and it's trapped inside. It's not like regular mucus of like having a chest coat, or, but it presents like an ungodly like cough. I mean, I mean, nonstop. And when I had it, I mean, it was, no one would even really identify it as that. And it, based upon definition, I mean, that's exactly what it was. Was mesothelioma, and ultimately now it seemed to be an apparatus that seemed to be like presenting, you know, fluid being trapped between the tissues, really an apparatus that somehow got in my lungs like while I was asleep and being operated on. Didn't even know it. How long it's been in my lungs, I'm not real sure. Or how many times this has even happened, really, to be honest with you. But it seemed to be presenting the, the, the fluid trap between what would normally be the thought of mesothelioma being the actual tissue, not necessarily an apparatus used in smoke inhalation for like chemical burns of like the lungs to prevent them from collapsing, and have a little bit of expansion to promote healing and strength of the lungs tissue itself. And it seemed to be, you know, that's really kind of like what's going on right now, and it's presenting some idea of like a wheezing. I mean, years before I even realized it. And even more so, what seemed to be the thing now. I mean, can you believe it? Just that one cycle of the letter N seemed to be the thing about coughing. And it seemed to be that apparatus and that fluid between whatever bag or whatever it is, but it seemed to be somehow involving like even like an allergist, like a combine of fluid and allergist and air quality, and you know, like what's going on with the pipelines in this area, and even if, you know, the food and what access means, like, you know, while I'm asleep, or, you know, when I go grocery shopping, or whatever the case is, or as a foreknowledge of performance monitoring, okay? So, like, anyway, you know, in any case, so, like, I'd realized that something about the similarity of mesothelioma that's described as fluid trapped between the tissues is also an explanation that is used kind of indirectly, that seem to be a couple of procedures that's suggested as normal, but if they were all combined together, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, the way it is that not one word's being said, but it's like they're almost saying, hey, like, hey, I told you so. It's kind of like, oh, did you really? And like when it all being combined all at once at the same time, like a heart transplant, it's like, you got to be kidding me. Well, anyway, the cardiologist is like already like not making a grade, and you know, while I'm talking to him anyway. But so I like really got tired of it. Okay, and automatically, immediately, it was like going to the different hospitals around this area, because it got to that point. I mean, like immediately before I even left the first time, knowing that it was really an issue of like a restriction of blood flow. I was having a serious circulation issue. And then combine some other idea, like with the consumer price index means a T-row price. But anyway, it seemed to be the thing about, you know, like even even the apparatus presenting what would sound like mesothelioma, fluids being trapped between the tissue. It seems to be like some apparatus is like in my lungs that lined, and it's only happened one time, but it seemed like a remote control. I mean, like while I'm holding, you know, like a Lexus LFSA, picture of a Lexus LFSA car, and doing my like infomercial thing about it, okay? But that was like the one and only time that I know of, at least while I was awake, that it expanded and actually kind of prevented me from having the ability like to, you know, get air into my lungs. And that's like happening, and I'm like recording like I'm doing like right now. I'm holding that thing about a picture, you know, of a Lexus LFSA, and I was like referring to like Mercedes-Benz, talking about all that, you know, Smart for Two, and ultimately, you know, thing about Scion IQ and Saturn Sky and Lexus LFSA, and ultimately getting to like the Texas New Mexico thing, next Texas New Mexico Power, about, you know, all that, you know, Smart for Two stuff, and the smart meter and center point energy, and the Smart for Two being like not an issue of like Region Zero, or, you know, the Region 1 in the United States and Canada, involving, you know, citizenship and birthrights, or not a question of intellectual easement. I'm assuming even the North American Free Trade Act is like trading energy. Obviously, it had been involved with this particular location here that I'm at now. And it seemed to be that, like all that combined, even the principle of like a student loan combined with the Pell Grant, it seemed to be how family law and foster granting presents the issue of like what would be like royalties of like, you know, rights to ownership normally involving entertainment, like music videos and motion picture of actors and actresses and musicians, and managers and producers and all that stuff is that all that at a business level and a corporate level and a presidential level, executive and legislative level. But it seems that when it gets to student loans, combining a student loan with a Pell Grant, I mean, it seems to be the thing about family law is what the deal is. And it seems to be the difference between an in-law or the thought of not really guardianship, not necessarily chaperoning, although it seemed to be the thing about what's the reality about the freedom of like a teenager as some idea somewhere religiously yet family, like a spiritual Jew is really like not a juvenile, but it seemed to be protected issues of the freedom in a religious way, and not, I don't want to say age group for the mere sake, but it seemed to be how family law is used sometimes with like a student loan combined with a Pell Grant in a religious academic way, more so in a Christian Science way, and the alphanumerics associated with like, Israel being 64 and American, and what the deal is about, the Jewish thing about it, and a 6-point star, the flag of Israel, and the deep star 6 thing. But it seemed to be really that all this information I'm talking about has got into, the word coffee, yea, the spirit chunking Java, the Java spirit chunking, cup of coffee, yeah. And that one letter N applied to coffee being coffin. And it seemed to be the thing like right now, it's kind of like it's almost like allergies combined with like a lining in the lungs that was not discussed or even asked or even given my consent based upon the information, but based upon description, not identifying the procedure, just on the description itself. I mean, it's so like misrepresenting the entire situation is phenomenally beyond, it doesn't really have to be insulting. I don't know if that would be maybe acknowledging potentially a confrontation. The thing is that I guess on a professional level, hearing anything, because I've heard a whole bunch of nothing and a whole bunch of stuff going on with a whole bunch of nothing, hearing something and like knowing whether to believe or anything about, what's going on in the hospital circuits going on in the Houston area, and it seemed to be like all motivated by COVID ID 19. Hopefully, in my mind, it's just the alphanumerics of 72 the categorization of money, which seemed to be the only issue of the U.S. dollar. Ultimately, the U.S. dollar and the euro dollar. And it seemed to be thinking about the center point energy that way. But anyway, what I'm really referring to about the coffee, the COFFEE, and that letter N in Latin terminology with one cycle above it, it seemed to be that seemed to be the thing about I want to say the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Okay, and I was referring to the thing about, Barack Obama was referring to Al Qaeda, okay, owning their own communications network, okay. And he had said on television that, he's trying to demonize you, was his word. And now it seems to be like, really, is that the EA Sports are like YouTube. And here's the thing about it is that it had got to, Al Qaeda being the idea that it's like, and everything that like I'm like really thinking about what's important right now, linguistic alphanumeric and the misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi, and ultimately, the ISS and SSI and the PPI and the PPO and the HMO becoming the euro and the euro dollar, based upon proper English numerical composition, and all that stuff about it. Okay, the thing with this is that the misappropriation allocation became that allocation with Al Qaeda, and it seemed to be almost like that song, Love Potion Number 9. I felt this way since 1956. She opened up my palm and she made a magic sign. She said, "What you need is Love Potion Number 9." Okay, and the thing with this is that seemed to be the Vantage Love 30. I mean, for real. 56 seemed to be the thing about the word plaza drum, the word, the question why, WHY, and paper, like paper mate, and paper mate being like 56 is 10, the alphanumerics is 94, annotated adoption abortion, which seems to be, my name is Wade, okay, but it seemed to be the real big deal about Roe v. Wade, and paper mate, seemed to be the thing, about 56 is 10, But ultimately, you know, it's kind of like I was thinking about that because of how, you know, state statutes and any codes annotated. But it seemed to be the thing about constitutional law being the black book and state statutes annotated being the black book. And the thing about also like jurisprudence with the black bag, and it seemed to be the thing about, you know, Cricket Wireless. Because here's what Barack Obama, and it seemed to be like all this information with like economics providing availability. Okay, and it's only because economics is providing availability such as Cricket Wireless, which is supposed to be, you know, like not an issue of Barack Obama saying that Al-Qaeda owns their own, you know, communications network. Or somewhere between Lockheed Martin or, you know, Northrop Grumman. In any case, the thing of it is that he was referring to Al-Qaeda doing that. And, you know, the way I think with linguistic alphanumerics is it ultimately got to, you know, Al-Qaeda being some idea of allocation. And then it was like lotion at first, and then the love potion, the potion lotion of that one song, because going through the circuit I was taken to a location, okay? And ultimately it's got into, you know, LaSix LaserCorrective eye surgery. And I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do it again. The thing of it is, okay, is that this one particular person, right here, it seemed to be the thing at certain times at locations that ultimately, you know, based upon experience, they when and where, predominantly on FM 518 in Pearland, okay? And I don't know if it's just the thing about executive administration or executive alphanumerics or EA Sports and the NFL presenting, you know, like, it's been throwing like FM 528 when I say 518 in Pearland. But in case, it seemed to be like every time that Mercedes-Benz was like in front of me, beside me, behind me, in oncoming traffic, that this one particular person is like on LaSix LaserCorrective eye surgery out on the west side of Houston as a coupon, okay? And the surgeon's name at that particular location on this particular address for the coupon on the west side of Houston is either Jeff or Jeffrey. And I had all that information, and I really wasn't keeping track with other than you know, hey, I'm looking at a current resident thing that I'm not even realizing anything other than my perception, even before, not limited to this one particular person, this coupon, that normally I was thinking of current resident. You know, my first thought was always like a med student, okay? Not that it had to be me, you know, like on weekends, as a med student. I mean, you know, for real, you know, in any case, so like I didn't really consider myself, you know, like the med student just going to like a club on the weekend during the 80s, 1980s, okay? But anyway, it seemed to be like really, you know, what a current resident is and is not, or the idea of like what seemed to be like involving even student loans combined with a Pell Grant, to seem the idea of foster granting the idea of like a PG-13 rating. And it's ultimately got into like Vantage Love 30 with the PG. And the W seemed to be the thing about really involving, you know, Michael Jackson's initial and Dr. Pepper and the deed restriction of 23 ingredients, and ultimately the Boolean chart and digital principles of digital audio and sequencing characterization and statistics in the West Wing of the White House, and, you know, the California Angels and the Blue Angels. And it seems to be the W, and it seems to be the W being the 23 letters, okay, of what seemed to be the Sigma Alpha Delta Kappa Phi. And all of them have 5 letters in each set except the last 3 being the PHI. And that's actually 23 alphabetical letters. And each of them has 5 except the last one being the 5 PHI. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that it's the degree involving, you know, like the degree geniuses of like electrical, electronics, engineering and software, of like audio production and special effects and digital signal processing, that ultimately gets the quantum, and the thing about, you know, auditing legal media that actually presents transparent vertical parameters, that's live, not a question of post-production or customizing waveform, that it's normally the horizontal parameters on, you know, digital signal processing, signal processors that, you know, allow, you know, customizing waveform in post-production as editing. What I'm talking about is vertical. And I've only seen it one time, really, at Commandos during the 1980s on FM 1960 on the north side of Houston. And I didn't even know what I was looking at the time. I was kind of like, oh, wow, I got to have one of those, you know. And I didn't think there would ever be an issue of like the ability or availability to actually get one. Actually, I haven't looked for one, but yeah, I'd like to really have all that kind of equipment. But in any case, so like that was going on way back in the 80s at Commandos about that one location, with one and only time. And it seemed to have the significance of attenuation, and the color code would seem to be the banner and the eagle's beak on the backside of the U.S. $1 bill of the pluribus UN and UM. And UN being like Los Angeles, all the way to UM being the University of Miami, and the color codes of like the Los Angeles area, including UCLA, combined with like the colors of like Miami, predominantly of the football team. And it presents certain colors of the pastel, and the gold, the blue, the orange, and at one particular degree involving attenuation and digital signal processing. And it seemed to be a thing about Houston, Texas, Electronic Power, We International, and Selective Service, about the Alphanumerics 181, or, you know, Alphanumerics USA being like Pearland, Texas, USA, or Attenuation USA. And the thing about, you know, Alphanumerics itself being 140, or Pearland, Texas, or, you know, Purple Heart, or Holy Miracles, and all that stuff about FBI psychology minus RCA, or the 22 thing, or FDIC or RCA, or the 26 thing. The 22 thing about the 22 letters of the Japanese alphabet language, and, you know, the 90 degree of reading it from top to bottom as compared to English from left to right, being like a whole different perspective of scale. It would normally be a percentile, normally of like a plane horizons of like importing and exporting, as compared to a circle pie chart of business law. It's almost like reading Japanese from top to bottom and English from left to right. And Pearland, Texas seems to be, I mean, the only one that it's not that it's the only one, but that since I live here, it seems to be like I've been here like, and realizing quite a bit of some of the information that's like in economics as compared to just knowing something about importing and exporting has, or, you know, what economics provides as availability, that would even be a factor, maybe manufacturing incorporation of a circuit, as compared to, you know, what participation is individually, or what participation in the circuit is and it's not. It's almost like not realizing what a television is in a person's home, looking right at it an entire lifetime, and maybe not experiencing something and not really realizing, I mean, everything that seemed to be like, you know, like when I'm going to the circus, kind of like everything I've ever known is not the way it is, you know. So like anyway, it's kind of like I was thinking about that. Here, hold on for a second here. The thing with this is that one thing is kind of like the lining seemed to be the issue, because, you know, it seemed to be like weight control has been like almost like a remote control of lap bands around my intestines and main arteries. And I mean, I'm sitting here looking at it, okay? I mean, during the Stargate program, okay, which I didn't even consider the Stargate program, really, although the World Trade Center was like an almost immediate thing before I'd even realized everything that had taken place. I mean, even though it was like showing that the first time I became that the World Trade Center 9/11 happened was in 2001, was really not my perception really of it really being that or limited to September 11th, 9/11, 1995 has always been my thing before I even realized memory was an issue, and I didn't even really remember or realize that maybe I should have automatically had an immediate memory that wouldn't have been a question, and didn't even realize that was the issue in memory had because of air raids while I was asleep. And I absolutely refuse to call that amnesia. It's that a person, or like when I was asleep and that happening, going through the circuit, you know, what seemed to be for a 6 or 9 month period, had ultimately got like after like years of thinking about so many things and realizing, like watching YouTube at different locations, it was actually really before and during and almost like reenactments of like locations of music video places. I mean, I bought a compact disc and just practiced this stuff in my home, went to concerts in the Summit, and all of a sudden it's kind of like during the Stargate program, even having a memory of actually being taken to different locations of actual music videos that I actually had watched and didn't even realize I was taken there. Didn't remember a thing about it. I mean, for real. And even like when being brought to my own home, and it's kind of like like knowing it's like complete silence around here for a while. But I'm waking up in my own home in the middle of the night, and I didn't even know I was in my own home. Yet there was like one laser scanning real slow from left to right, and furniture was in here that I didn't even know it was my own home. The furniture had been changed. A drum set had been put in here, and when I opened up my eyes, I mean, it was about a 35 to 45 minutes before I even grasped or computed language in my mind as a thought process. I mean, I'm just like looking at it, and not one thought, maybe other than maybe knowing that light is like the deal. It seems to be like right now involving this computer, because it's kind of like, automatically, LaSix laser corrective eye surgery. I mean, I'm not real sure the first time, but I mean, really, but it's kind of like, hey, like, wow, look who's in the mailbox, okay? And it's really been that way, I mean, since day one to this day. I mean, from like, really, I mean, God, must have been from like, the early 80s to like now. I'm not sure how long that picture's been around, but it seemed to be like for a period that Mercedes-Benz, for a 15-year period, which ultimately got to the prefix of the White House 4, 5, and 6, which is like 15, okay, and it seemed to be as a point of origin only because of a laser. The second time, beyond what was a pitching injury, I didn't even realize the laser hadn't even been involved, okay. The thing is that from 1979 to the year 2022 had been that long, and not even realize there any kind of connectivity about the prefix of the White House, or 4, 5, and 6 being 15, or when I was like at the age of 15 and had a pinching injury that a laser had been involved with. But it was only because of the second time in 2022, only 2 years after I was like getting on YouTube, and like referring to like, Barbara Walters in 2020 and Hugh Downs and certain information that seemed to be, and Barbara Walters later in her own television series called The View, that I realized that this home was actually built here. The same home, the same design. I'm assuming virtually everything about it. And I was here in diapers, okay, and I didn't remember, I mean, not one thing about it. This home had obviously been torn down probably in 1965 or 1966. It may actually be something about Chevrolet Avalanche Z66 representing that happening, how many places or people, based upon, I'm thinking, my birth year, 1964. Although 1992, the map clearly identifies Pearland, Texas as one of the rectangles, the red rectangles of restricted areas. Or the initials, RA of restricted area being like 19. Or the thing about, June 19th, as compared to the thought of Kobe ID 19, or Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shadow Government Stargate Program. And the categorization of money of the alphanumerics of Kobe ID 19 being 72, or the world, or school, or all that stuff about alphanumerics of 72. But in any case, so like this home had obviously been built here, the same design, and then tore down. I mean, I lived in, and then my parents moved to Houston. What was obviously a period that was seen from my birth year, and whether they lived here or not, I mean, I was brought to this location. And it was only after I'd been on YouTube and all these other things were happening that I had a memory as an infant in diapers. And there was like a pastel blue bowl. And I don't know who put it in there repeatedly over the years. But, pastel's like a 1960 thing about color. And this one particular, salad bowl, I'm assuming the salad bowl or the cake thing, and the humor about, the salad bowl and, 1,000 Islands and all that stuff. But anyway, it's like a pastel blue bowl, okay? And it's like right in the pantry, and like looking through the window, and I mean, all of a sudden, my memory as a child in diapers, looking through the window that direction with that bowl in my hand, I mean, for the first time, I was kind of like, I wasn't even realizing that this home had been here, and actually my parents actually came here after, I mean, all that, and moved back to Pearland. in 1969, and then like ultimately started building here like during pretty close to what would be the 1976 Richard Nixon thing about, you know, celebrate 200-year celebration of America and the bicentennial thing. But I think it was towards the late 1976 and 77 building it. I, you know, personally helping my parents, you know, while going to school and playing baseball and all that. And moving in it and not remembering, I mean, not one thing, not one word was said. I mean, not one word. And like I'm remembering as Chauvin that this home was here, and I actually came back and helped my parents build the same home. And I mean, the entire time of actually moving, you know, in this home, from like really not December 1978, because there was like a little room outside that we stayed in for a while. But anyway, yeah, so like and then moving in, and throughout the entire time, like going through high school, playing baseball, and then, you know, certain times about you know, going to further education into, you know, even an apprenticeship, and, you know, years going on, different places of employment and education, and you know, predominantly, you know, the significance that seemed to be involving, you know, studying to be a paralegal for, I mean, a very brief time at the Center for Advanced Legal Studies has become a huge major factor with the amount of time that I was actually putting in my interest in that direction, which really seemed to be virtually everything except what I was studying to as a paralegal. Virtually my direction in law ultimately went beyond, you know, the thought of the paralegal and international financial management, international law. More so in a lot of ways, but ultimately, you know, going to the Center for Advanced Legal Studies for a little while, and then the Art Institute of Houston studied music video and audio production, television, and music video business. But anyway, yeah, so like all that was like going on, and I'm kind of like wondering if Chevrolet Avalanche Z66 and the World Trade Center is identifying maybe, you know, families like around the entire world, or, you know, even more specifically the U.S. dollar, and about doing the same thing. Or, you know, I mean, why I haven't heard not one word. I mean, they're all passed away now, and I haven't heard one word, I mean, from anyone about it. But it seemed to be that even building this home and living here, I mean, I didn't remember, I mean, not one thing about it. And it was only after me, like in 2020, and thinking about Barbara Walters, and then on 2020 with Hugh Downs, which seemed to be the thing about, you know, 2001, the World Trade Center information seemed to be, you know, linked to a bunch of information involving Barbara Walters and Hugh Downs that had led to some thought of memory of that, you know, and the World Trade Center that had actually taken place in the year 2001. Convinced me that it was 2001 or multiple locations, but, you know, it seemed to be really the thing about 1995, 9/11, you know, 1995 actually being the World Trade Center and being taken in different locations like all over the world. And it seemed to be 1995 that the United States President Air Force One was identified as English yet foreign policy with the midnight blue on it. During 1995, it was the only thing, even knowing it or getting to even see it or realize it or even know that much that had taken place. It seemed to be that 1995 was the 1 year that identified the President of the United States Air Force One, identified as the acronym FBI as a foreign bureau, whether it's the interrogation or just the midnight blue about, you know, what's going on, including the World Trade Center. In any case, so like a combine of like the midnight blue, and certain other colors similar. I'm not real sure. My memory's not real clear. About, you know, all the knowing that the Air Force One President of the United States is normally the colors of, I mean, the 1040 EZ for him, and the blue and white that way. Even, you know, AT&T. But anyway, yeah. So like you know, all that was going on, but ultimately, you know, it's kind of like I'm going to get back to, you know, where I was really thinking about. It's the coffee and the coffin, and it seemed to be the only thing about the oblation and ablation. That the way it was defined ultimately led to the similarities of mesothelioma, and then the similarities that's really not normal in any kind of description, like the inner lining of like an apparatus used to keep the lungs from collapsing from a chemical burn, like an airbag that seemed to be like still in my lungs, and no one has like even like admitted one thing, not one doctor, not one x-ray. Can't even convince me that I'm even looking at my own x-rays at this point, or having my entire life like x-rayed like with every mattress. It seems to be I can't even keep my own mattress as soon as I get one. Seems like it's like like a pit crew in the Indy 500s, like running in and out, like changing the landscaping and the piping and all kinds of crap about mood altering, like idea of like whatever that's supposed to mean. It's like not cool to me in any kind of way. Or the thought of like my home having a huge platform under it, like it's a huge ship of the century, experiencing like waveform. It's like the house is kind of like rocking back and forth, kind of like a bright out of video, or like a flipping home for like an extreme makeover. Yeah, so it seemed to be the thing about certain terms involving television. It seemed to be like really not cool. In any case, so like, yay, alright, so like that's like what's going on, okay, but the thing with this is that it seemed to be that one thing about the letter N applied to Occupational Safety Health Administration being an acronym of OSHA. Okay, let me get right back to Barack Obama talking about, Al-Qaeda, and it seemed to be about the misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi and allocation in Al-Qaeda. Not that it has to be Al-Qaeda. The thing with this is that I studied linguistic alphanumerics, okay? And now with all the information that's being provided, what economics has made available based upon economics would automatically be like supplemental security, looking for something, worthy of like, within, like a designated direct deposit, normally $967 like right now. But I'm looking for, that ultimate, scale between the international superstar and the supplemental security and the misappropriation allocation in the Mississippi, and getting on into like I feel like being a superstar, and yeah, all right, yeah. So like in any case, so like I was thinking about that because it seemed to be the thing about the coffee and that letter N and coffin and what the deal is about being like in progress. The ing kind of presents the presence. With the N, it just sounds like coffin, like a military barrel deterrent, but it's almost like the G not being in the word being, venue, a thing about human civil rights and human capital, a method beyond a method of banking. And the thing about that one letter applied to the coffee and the coffin, it's almost like really, and it's like the GI Bill almost, and the IG and coffin being the ing of like, duration of actual presence and actual real time, like right now, the ing presenting the current event, in progress, kind of like processing, like the now thing about the ing about it, okay? And the alphanumerics are 30, okay? Vantage love 30. But it seems to be that acronym OSHA and that one letter N being combined, that it presents the 1 cycle per second, identifying the secrets of the temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country, and the history of the U.S. dollar below the equator, and Latin being 56, and something in my mind about that song. I felt this way since 1956. She looked at my palm and she made a magic sign. She said, what you need is love potion number 9. And all this information about pastel green and cricket, and Obama saying, that Al-Qaeda like owns their own communication system. It's kind of like, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, really? Wow, Well, like anyway, so like a bunch of technical, like not funny crap. It only seemed to be give me the impression of EA Sports involving YouTube. Me being a drummer, okay, a lot of stuff had been going on, and like now I'm in a tent in my own home, okay. I mean, it's not cool to me, like really at all, okay. In any case, so all the fame and fortune and the glamour and prestige, there's a little bit of humor, ignoring the only thing about it being a humoring thing about myself, for myself, beyond the toilet, okay? But anyway, so like it seemed to be the thing about really about the coffee being the caffeine representing some idea of the lining of the lungs involving inhalation of a chemical burn. Yet it seemed to be the thing about of the heartbeat of. Here's the thing. That's not my thought of the heartbeat of America. Although this is like the only thing about the heartbeat of America seemed to be like an automatic adrenaline rush. I mean, for real. But the thing of it is that ultimately it seems that okay. Here's the thing: is that this neighborhood, okay, is like 107. I think every county road, I think it's either 7 or 8, maybe 9. I'm not sure if something about it had alternated. I really wasn't paying attention, but I'm thinking that's exactly what it is. When I first moved here, it's this road, county road, which was originally county road 107C and Route 1 box 1104. It changed to, like Mona Lane, 36 Mona Lane. Then now it's like Mona Street, yet it's still county road 107. And the thing about this one particular coupon, I mean, automatically, it being LaSix, LaserCorrective eye surgery, and the syllables of the coupon being, like GodsAngel, okay? And, and like in the beginning was the Word was God, and the Word is God, and God said, let there be light. I mean, it's almost like this county road and alternating between 107G and 107H. It's like the silence of light. Light, okay? And the thing of it is that the silence is it's almost like a picture, yet the silence is almost like and I'll get into this later, but it seemed to be that the county roads in this street had alternated between 107G and H, and I think that's really what it was, because I know that this was actually the street I'm on now, 3611 Mona Street in Pearland, Texas, is that it was 107C. I mean, in the beginning, it's kind of like, where'd it go? And I'm not sure if it was ever like placed anywhere else, or if it allowed for the alternating between the G and the H. I'm thinking that might really be. I haven't really spent any time trying to figure out, like, really not anything beyond like what I'm talking about like right now. But it seemed to be really this one person in LaSix, LaserCorrective eye surgery, involving the coupon, and wow, look who's in a mailbox. Yeah, so like the thing with this is that it presents that proper English grammatical composition, or the thought of like sequencing characterization in sets of 4, only using 2 numbers. And now I'm kind of like on the Boolean chart with the West Wing of the White House. And the deal about being venue in Geneva, Switzerland, being human civil rights, and being not having a G in it. The BEIN is the alphanumeric 30, or Vantage Love 30, or Secret de facto 30. And it is the G, and it seemed to be the thing about parental guidance. The PG-13 rating, presidential governors being the PG, or parental guidance, or the pro-golf, and it being, the thing about 23. Or Dr. Pepper and her 23-year anniversary celebration. Or George W. Bush seems to be the president about a transition from the William Jefferson Clinton, Al Gore, and I always like to include Chevy Chase because of the 1992 presidential inaugural ball and the significance of what it seemed to be involving, the Houston, Texas area, and electronic power and We International and quite a bit, and I mean, automatically I think that it seemed to have the significance of, the alphanumerics that way, on a huge, beyond huge, So in any case, I was thinking about that because of and the person here, and and the thing about the Austin Powers movie and the wheelbarrow, I'm going to include this real quick because she here what you're seeing right now is LaSix LaserCorrective eye surgery based upon a coupon in the mailbox as a current resident. Okay, Austin Powers movie, and I'm trying to remember which one it is, but I mean they're virtually almost the similarities are beyond the misconception of like would assume to be almost virtually identical, other than the one in Austin Powers movie in a wheelbarrow. It's like green eyes, okay? If my memory serves me correctly, it's only a few seconds, but it seemed to be the deal. I mean, automatically, I think of linguistic alphanumerics, okay? And when I realized that there was like some connection in my memory about the wheelbarrow, and Astroworld is what the deal is about the barrel of fun. And Astroworld turned into Six Flags. And my thing about it, like June 14th, 1992, baptism ultimately being, now what seems to be the Six Flags baptism of an Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Stargate program, and how the colonel is involved with SAN software and international financial management, and telekinetic roll the pen, and all this information that seemed to be like going through the circuit that involves Chevrolet Corvette, and the thing about the veterinarian and Aryan skies of that. And the thing with this is that really I don't really see that name really involved that way, but it almost seemed to be like automatic. Anyone living in a neighborhood that's not human capital. I'm thinking even human capital, we're not making a grade, having the idea of a commercial venue of living quarter that's not affected by television programming or deed restrictions or any method of banking. It seemed to be the only thing about neighborhoods involving monetary domestic aggregates. And it only seems to be, maybe possibly the only reason why there's 2 9-hole golf courses, because monetary and domestic aggregates is represented by 2 9-hole golf courses. I'm just personally almost assuming, not limited to, but it seems to be the only thing about suppression and loss prevention involving FDIC claims. You've heard the phrase, and I just said it like a little earlier, it's like internationally acclaimed. It's like almost on a continental level of a coupon. A percentile, yeah, all right. Yeah, I can hardly wait, yeah. So like in any case, so like it seemed to be like a percentile of a coupon on a continental level, as compared to what would only be maybe the thought of maybe an individual situation, such as even a student loan combined with the program, but where it seemed to be on a larger scale, seemed to be between the ERISA statute and the IRA, and the difference of only 24, and it seemed to be the acronym, and the Apple iPhone SE being 24. Yet it presents the alphanumerics of the acronyms of Homeowners Association, HOA. GMAC of General Motors Acceptable Corporation, and promissory notes in the IEEE of the International Electronic Engineering, all being 24. And normally the IEE has the O, International Electronic Engineering Organization. But it seemed to be really the thing about experiencing a vice president network and what is virtually almost always on a pawn check in a pawn shop is 240%. A lot of people might not think that they're experiencing a vice president network as a result going into a pawn shop. The thing with this is about a commercial venue of living quarters, where a minimum of like appliances is only like 240, only because of a commercial venue of living quarters. It's not that it's required to have a stationary engineer, but more so than probably not. The thing with this is that it not being a neighborhood, not affected by television programming or deed restrictions or loss prevention as suppression, or any idea that legal media is not an issue of breach of copyright. It seemed to be like just turning K television on is automatically the issue, as compared to internationally acclaimed international banking systems. Normally not associated in my mind automatically with like anything on K television involving some idea of like a war. Civil war is kind of like debatable, but the thing with this is that the name Ulysses S. Grant on a financial level seems to be the idea of like monopolizing capitalization, ultimately using family law and tool device and mechanisms such as like student loan combined with the Pell Grant It's like it ultimately gets to, solid state or monopolizing capitalization, having use of family law. I mean, it seemed to be all the practical application and the presence, the appearance, the presence, what seemed to be involving family law at a family law level, whether it be involving presidential, executive or legislative, or just family law, or just a neighborhood, as compared to a degree level or reputable standards, a consensual participation, which defines normally the meaning of either a civic club or a neighborhood anyway, or not. So it seemed to be really how family law is used, with just like the thing about, Ulysses S. Grant, one of the presidents. Yeah, so it seemed to be the thing about it, yeah. That using family law that way seemed to be the thing about the PG-13. Ultimately, it seemed to be getting to even monopolizing capitalization, which seems to be the thing about solid state, and it's not the option. It seemed to be when something like the World Trade Center happens. I mean, you've seen the game Monopoly, and it's kind of like wondering, really, what was it limited to? I mean, is that the idea of like the World Trade Center of like 9/11, some idea of like monopolizing capitalization? So like, what does that really mean? So, and all that stuff about, family being 66 and Chevrolet Avalanche Z66. I mean, somewhere in my mind, it seemed to be involving all this information and ultimately using family law as a PG. The alphanumerics of what, 16 and 7, wow. 23. And, Dr. Pepper being Dietrich's in the 23-year anniversary celebration, and 23 ingredients. And then 23 being like a syllable, and 20 being 107, or military, or quantum, or Diners Club, and the 3 being, the 56. And it seemed to be the thing about the plaza, the drum. Even that song, I felt this way since 1956. She opened up my palm and she made a message sign. She said, what you need is love potion number 9. And in addition to Barack Obama making a statement that he's trying to demonize you, he didn't say YouTube, but I mean, is that really what he's trying to say with EA Sports as executive alphanumeric, executive administration, that EA Sports is representing something about Wells Fargo and clear access banking, and how in between Wells Fargo with clear access banking and Regions Bank presents the idea of whether Vice President Network and Immigration Customs Enforcement between like Insights and Quicken Books is the only idea of being inside or outside. Like a VPN would represent whether participation is some idea as attached or detached as a fixture in real estate. A Vice President Network being a VPN or a virtual personal network only based upon a fixture in real estate using family law. What seemed to be the big deal about monopolizing capitalization ultimately. And I'm kind of like wondering, I mean, is that really ultimately what the World Trade Center and Chevrolet Avalanche Z66 and Route 66 meant, to like a rural route and exclusionary rule provision, the Earp of Wyatt Earp and John Wayne, and all that information. I mean, hop singing a walk in Oriental food, just the pronunciation of walk and a jaywalk, not being a jaywalk and being amphibious, or like of J. Edgar Hoover, and making a grade beyond Internet Protocol of a local area network of maritime law, and being amphibious in that way, get into the aviation, the National Aeronautic Space Administration of a commercial venue of living quarter, beyond thought of liquid equity. I mean, as simple as pronunciation gets sometimes. Seemingly involving, the idea of like that 1 cycle per second that's on the end in like Latin terminology and in language, that 1 cycle per second is representing Latin in the U.S. dollar, in the history of the U.S. dollar in Latin America, as something involving the mammon. And that's my idea, like not necessarily cool and whatever, okay, but not really whatever at all. But Obama was talking that talk, and it seemed to be that book, Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, and that he's trying to demonize, and it seemed that just the history of the U.S. dollar below the equator involving the mammon it just seems like, you know, sometimes using the District of Columbia or Columbia in a way, that seemed to be like, you know, something like really not cool about that. And the thing with this is that ultimately that Barack Obama making that statement only seems to be the information in the book. Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, and the History of the U.S. Dollar Below the Equator, yet it presents South America and Latin as 56, yet paper being 56, or drum. And the question is, it presents that one cycle, what only seemed to be redundant frequency of monetary and domestic, only of neighborhoods identifying signal strength. I think it would probably be more so of redundant frequency, and providing the thought would only be a neighborhood identifying a grid as redundant frequency or liquidal equity. What a house speaker is and within signal strength, or having fair use, or, you know, what the real national security issue is maybe not being aware. Everyone's like accused of being spiritually gifted and telepathic. Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, yeah. Oh, really? Is that what you mean? So, like, this is what I have to say about it, okay? Because, I mean, really? I mean, so, like, Barack Obama's talking about, you know, he's trying to demonize you. Are you talking about YouTube, Barack Obama? Trying to demonize YouTube? Like, what is that supposed to mean in relation, you know, like an automatic overdrive? Kidding me? With a posi track? Yeah. So, like, yeah, all right, yeah. So, like, in any case, so, like, that was the statement he'd made. And it seemed to be that Cricket Wireless is presenting the pastel green. Okay, here's the thing. Is that during 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the pastel green was identified as province, involving world history and world class, okay? During the bicentennial thing about 1976 and Richard Nixon, his last name also being 76, the thing with this is that bicentennial drummer, okay, is on the quarter in the Statue of Liberty. And, you know, the traditional, you know, thing about the stars, okay? So the thing with this is that, like, all that information was, like, being combined, and now it seems to be, all the information is economics providing, you know, availability in the form of, like, Cricket Wireless and the pastel green representing their opening, you know, when their website opens up, it presents that word smile, and now it seems to be that song Black Velvet and that little boy smile, Black Velvet, and what I hear at times is soul southern style, which automatically, the soul thing, you know, automatically being black that way, or, you know, constitutional law, or state statutes annotated, just the color-coded space declaration, and those books in the law library. And the thing with this is that that one song seemed to be Black Velvet and that little boy smile, seemed to be the pastel green of, like, Cricket Wireless, and of Barack Obama stating that Al-Qaeda owns its own, you know, communications network. Similarly now, it seemed to be the only thing about allocation, misappropriation, allocation in Al-Qaeda. I first thought, you know, automatically it would be the lotion, the potion lotion, and that song, but it's really the ocean, the pronunciation of Occupational Safety Health Administration, and that N applied, what would be Latin terminology, also the alphanumerics of 56, combined with the dollar, which is 62, and it's like a difference of what, 56 to 62, I think it's only 6. And once again, it gets right back to the difference between, you know, ABC 13, Houston, all the way to ABC 7, Los Angeles is like a difference of 6. Between Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal Act, is like 6 presidential terms in office. From the year 1995, the World Trade Center, September 9/11, like 1995 to 2001 is a difference of 6. Between J.D. Powers, between J and D is a difference of 6. I mean, it just goes on, and how presidential reference and using the alphanumerics of 6, it seems to be, I mean, presidential is unreal about 6 and alphanumerics of 6 and all that. But anyway, so it seemed to be that Al-Qaeda, when Barack Obama was referring to that they own their own network, and I've seen a lot going on that seem to be linking, you know, things about Florida and that Pulse Club and Cricket Wireless and Pearland, it being like one of the phones being identified as Pulse and being sold and purchased, and like Cricket Wireless in Pearland, Texas, and all that stuff going on about the Pulse Club and all that information. It's kind of like, well, is that what you're referring to, Barack Obama, and being sold in Pearland? Barack Obama says he's trying to demonize you. Well, I'm on YouTube. I mean, so like, what's that supposed to mean to EA Sports? I mean, is that supposed to be like technical difficulties based on the Pulse phone being sold and Cricket Wireless and some idea of like, you know, Florida representing the Bermuda Triangle that way? Or, you know, what's the real deal? What really seemed to be the thing about the Bermuda Triangle, once again, seemed to be a telepathic blueprint on a wall based upon the dimension and specification of the rooms on a governmental, you know, state, federal, local authority structure of symmetrical and asymmetrical representing ACTP : // or the ratio // the way it's designed, and a telepathic blueprint on a wall. Hopefully, in my mind, I just wasn't going to sit there and look at the wall anymore. So, like, you know, like I got my Papermate pen and like my legal pad, and only because of a little shelf on the opposite side of the wall, started out with 2 vertical lines. Only because there's like 2 triangles. I was already thinking that way anyway back then, and they're like 94, 95, and 96, not limited to. And, you know, that was being built, and even that was like rebuilt, and I was actually there in diapers. And like I'm remembering, like even that was like there and like tore down. And like while I'm there, it's like being built and being completed while I'm there. And it's like me being here, not remembering that this home was here. And I actually was building it and didn't remember a thing about being here. And then it being tore down. Like when I was in diapers and went to Houston and moved back. And, you know, in parallel from 1969, you know, and like moved to this location like in December of like 1978, okay, this is year 2025, okay, and like that on A-Row and County Road 45 and Texas, I mean, that was there, then tore down, a certain section of it. It's kind of like, when I was there, it's like, you know, fixed, you know, the demanded requirements of like participating, you know, sojourning through the wilderness and like, you know, like a circuit. yeah, so like, that was like being built, and I didn't remember it like right immediately. And after it had been built, and after only because of being on YouTube, I mean, after the fact, like 25, 30 years later, and remember, I was actually in there, and that was actually built and tore down just like this home was. And, you know, I was like thinking about it, I was talking to my dad, and not one person, like on the entire planet. I mean, so like, you know, automatically, it's kind of like, it got to the point like eternal life and eternal damnation. It's like everyone on the planet like knows. And it's like ahead of schedule had been a major factor going through the Stargate program. That at the time I didn't even consider to be a Stargate program, but known that it had been like aerating gas like while I was asleep, and you know like a 6 to a 9 month period was, you know, automatically, and now it seemed to be the complete, not anything other than the ability of like knowing that potentially only because of alphanumerics that something of neutrality would represent something of Geneva, Switzerland, and the being venue, human civil rights, and some idea of like going through the circle becoming itemized as human capital and going beyond some idea, and put on an Airbus H-160 helicopter, and I'm assuming that's how I got to Geneva, Switzerland. I'm really not sure, I mean, like at all, but, you know, and I'm not even sure that if it was the same day. It might have been at the same place at the same time, but a different day. But, you know, remembering anything about it is only because it's like back on world news or YouTube or national news, like, and watching YouTube and rejuvenating the memory about something about it. And ultimately it got that the human civil rights had got to the human capital side of beyond the method of banking. And it seemed to be involving like all the monetary domestic gross national product aggregates. And they reached the statute in the IRA, and like all this is going on, it's kind of like, you know, not one word, it's kind of like getting a big image. So like, it's kind of like, where's my commercial venue of living quarters and my Hill HX-50 helicopter and make a multi-billion millionaire like way of living, you know? It's kind of like, you know, like where's it at? You know, it's kind of like, you know, hey man, you know, like I ate a bowl of like, you know, Campbell's alphabet soup, okay? I mean, like I'm all American executive. I mean, do you grasp and retain the capacity to grasp the meaning of alphanumerics at that point and A1 steak sauce, okay? Yeah. So like any case, so like it got to the point that I mean, you know, going through something like that, I mean, so seriously like beyond like yeah, so like and not hearing one word about it, it's kind of like, you gotta be kidding me. So like, you know, really ultimately it seemed to be like, you know, signed up being executive of the century, you know, and changing the entire geographical area, you know, and have something like a Wade Bank International Aryan Skies of like annuities and Airmark Arena on the Highway 288, yeah, and maximum seating capacity of 26,000. Yeah, all right, yeah. Yeah, and at the time, it's kind of like I was like on the Heaven Star, records, manufacturing, distribution, and sales and promotions, and Impact Records. But I'm not real thrilled about the Impact Records like I was. But the thing of it is that Transdeath Horizon seemed to be like a really good deal about the J. Edgar Hoover being amphibious and all that thing about making a grade beyond Internet Protocol of Local Area Network of Maritime Law. Transdeath Horizon, it seemed to be the thing about altitude and being amphibious within, the sky's the limit thing about, certain factors about it. And the Transdeath Horizon, seemed to be the altimeter and the plane horizon, yet economics in the way of like importing and exporting, yet aeronautics and aviation at the same time. Even a Transdeath Horizon, yacht manufacturing, distribution, and in Freeport, Texas, kind of like, it's kind of like, just like put it over there and bring me, a multitude of like prints and let me choose the one I want for myself, okay? So like, good. Oh yeah, and by the way, where's my Diners Club card, okay? Yeah, all expense paid, yeah. I don't know if it has to be all expense or just like some annuitized version, yeah. So like, it's kind of like, it gets on into, it's kind of like, it's kind of like, coming in and out and seeing so many huge buildings and sections being built, and just tore down during a 10-year period, and realizing like all that was like happening. It's like realizing like an eternal treasure is like just building and tearing down. It looks like they're just doing it to be doing it. It's like, where'd it go? For real, it's kind of like, you got to be kidding me. And it's like really, really realizing, really for real, like that's like really happening, and so I was kind of like thinking, that way anyway. It's kind of like, good, well, so like well, good, well, great, well then, put Air Marcarino. There was maximum seating capacity of 26,000, and also Wade Drum Manufacturing, yes, the 21 series, yes, of course, yes. So all that way of thinking like Wade's World, yes. But anyway, so got like great, okay. But anyway, it's kind of like thinking about that because all that information's already gone an hour and 22 minutes. And I want to include that because I don't want to run out I don't even know how much power I have in my battery right now. But I want to include that because it seems to be, I want to include that real quick about the Black Velvet and that Little Boy Smile. And that one word smile about that song attached to Cricket Wireless. And, like when their mobile app opens up, it's got that word smile. And that song, it seemed to be the Black Velvet and that Little Boy Smile involving the pastel green and Cricket Wireless. And the English Parliament and jurisprudence with the black back on the back. It seemed to be that Black Velvet and that Little Boy Smile, Black Velvet, and that soul, Southern style, a new religion that'll bring you to your knees. It seemed to be like it all is going together with Barack Obama talking that talk about Al-Qaeda, yet truthfully so, yet truthfully not. And it seemed to be the only thing about pronunciation and misappropriation and allocation applied to the thing about, Al-Qaeda being the ocean. At first I thought it was like, would be like the potion lotion of that song. I felt this way since 1956. She opened up her palm and she made the magic sign. She said, what you need is love potion number 9. So I was like on that potion lotion thing about Al-Qaeda, and alphanumeric linguistics, and like looking at it as a misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi, and even what Amazon.com is to the equator or carbon footprint and absentee voting that way, involving a vice president network. And the thing, that's how I was thinking about Al-Qaeda and Barack Obama saying that in the Secrets of the Temple, how the Federal runs the country with the history of the U.S. dollar below the equator in Latin terminology, and that one waveform on the Latin letter N applied to OSHA, and all that linking, the Spore Stone and orthopedic surgery, and Deep Star 6, and all that stuff about the Israeli flag, and the forecast of We International, and the thing about the 4 inches of humerus bone. It seemed to be the thing about the footprint and Bureau of Biostatistics, ultimately getting to, a carbon footprint like combined with biometrics, and the forecast, identifying some idea of the Spore Stone, that 4 inches of my humerus bone on both left and right arms had been removed. And well, sure, I noticed the difference But I mean, I didn't see any indication and didn't even know at first that I had been even operated on. I mean, didn't even know it. I noticed a difference and that I had to lean from side to side, you know. I mean, that's so, like, not cool. Like, I want my forces, my humerus bone back on my arms, okay? And, oh, yes, please, don't forget, yes, it's the eyeballs above the beltway, okay? Yeah, all right. Yeah, so, like, yeah, all right. So, like, have some trans-depth horizon, you know, plane horizon, you know, beyond the beltway, in relation between architecture and platform, embedding encryption. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So somewhere like in anatomy and the FDIC and selective service, having some idea what only fair use is meant. It seemed to be like all the time. It seemed to be ultimately getting to like, you know, when it matters most. And I think I've heard really quite a bit about it in a way on a subconscious level that's like already like beyond not cool. Okay. The thing with this is that ultimately it seems to be that really. I mean, if accurate is going to be some idea of like anything other than, you know, the thought of maybe Charles Barkley saying anything less would be uncivilized. And I really think Charles Barkley is referring to anything less being uncivilized is really identifying monetary and domestic aggregates of neighborhoods. And not necessarily, although suggesting, knowing that the commercial venue of living quarters is not affected by television programming or deed restrictions or mechanics liens, or tool devices and mechanisms that would be considered, you know, anything other than some, at least at a minimum, McDonald's gold arches of degree level referral centers and consensual participation in what that one cycle of frequency over the letter N being side by side, being some idea of like what a grid is in neighborhoods, representing some idea of like fertility and prosperity, or, you know, the projected estimate of relation, you know, the misappropriation and allocation of the Mississippi in a way of like the affirmative fallopian tube of the century. In any case, so like, I mean, it really gets to it, I mean, for real. Symbolic, and, you know, it seemed to be the Christian Science side of like really looking at it that way. But anyway, yeah, it's already going on. Like, got a minute and 27 seconds and 5 seconds. So I think I'm going to do it one more time about the black velvet and that little boy smile. Black velvet and that soul southern style. A new religion that'll bring you to the news. It seems to be thinking about Cricket Wireless. And that word smile and that song combined with some idea that Barack Obama said that he's trying to demonize you. Or what that is to EA Sports and executive alphanumerics and executive administration and YouTube. So like, okay. But in any case, so it seemed to be the thing about, you know, that applied to Barack Obama referring to Al-Qaeda, and it seemed to be really, ultimately, you know, like I said, I thought it would be the lotion, the potion lotion, and the alphanumerics of 56, because 56 is pen and paper made, it's so like alphanumerics of 94, and it seemed to be the thing about Roe v. Wade so very much, and in a way that, I mean, yeah, so like anyway, so like now I'm kind of like on the Aryan Skies of that thing because it's the alphanumerics of 213, likewise my name, WadeASVPriddy, but I'm actually thinking of it as getting beyond like maritime law into the aeronautics, the aviation, and a commercial venue of living quarter, making a grade beyond like a internet protocol of local air network of maritime law. And the thing about Chevrolet Silverado and the Z71 and Chevrolet being 108 or operator, or the 0 being a 0 and 64, and HTTP : / and Zion, 1,000 years peace, and Grover Cleveland, and all that stuff about, you know, ultimately even Texas, New Mexico power. But I mean, it's already going on like an hour and 28 minutes and like 45 seconds. So I'm going to stop right there, okay? So, yeah, so like there it is, okay?